Check 1 2 1 2. Okay, I think it's working. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about political issues. Now I wanted to talk about this because, as you all know, I am trying to start a Nazbol Empire revolution. So naturally, as any person would do, I'm going to try and explain my viewpoints as best I can. And I wanted to go to a political site that would tell me the biggest issues around so I could check. And yeah, that's pretty much what the video is going to be about. So we're going to go through all of these issues right here. And basically tell you all of the things that we're going to do. So first of all, gay marriage. Do you support the legalization of same-sex marriage? Well, in my society, marriage is a construct. It's not actually real. There is no marriage. If there was marriage, though, I would forcibly make every single person pansexual, which I'm already doing. So basically everyone's forcibly pansexual, but there's no actual marriage in my society, so it's a little bit hard to actually support or deny the existence of gay marriage in the society because there is no marriage. Next is LGBT adoption rights. Now, in my society, no one is biologically made a kid, right? Like, you don't have a kid. What happens is there's genetic modification that creates a kid, and then you adopt the kid. So everyone is allowed to have a kid, and because everyone's pansexual, yes, you are allowed to adopt a kid if you have LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender things. Blah, 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 blah. Next is abortion. Well, as I said, genetic modification, no need for abortion, so, just scratch that. Next is Planned Parenthood. I don't support Planned Parenthood because there is none in my society, and I don't really like what Planned Parenthood is doing because it's giving money to people, and we don't really like that here. We only give money to the poorest people, and sometimes Planned Parenthood gives money to, middle-class families. Disgusting. Next is religious freedom. No such thing as religious freedom. Everyone has to be Christian. I completely ban this. Next is a gun buyback. Absolutely not. What we would do in my society is everyone is allowed a machine gun, AK-47, you're allowed a tank, but everyone, acts not individually, everyone acts collectively, so no one would actually get one of these unless they had an army or something, and no one really has any individual thought, so I would basically program everyone to think that they shouldn't get guns, but make it legalized. Next is martial rape. In my society, we kill everyone who ever makes a bad act. If you lie, killed. You do anything bad, really, you're killed. Red pigs have like this innate ability to basically they can't lie. They have extremely big brains, but they have a dysfunction in it, which is they can't lie, they can't really deceive people, they can't really do anything wrong, and I'm one of those red pigs. I have never done anything wrong in my entire life. People who say that are a bunch of liars. Anyway, we're going to go on to the next one, is transgender athletes. Well, in my society, again, genetic modification, so if you want to be transgender, you can just get genetic modification and you have the exact same abilities as someone else. Next is gender identity. Should it be added into the anti-discrimination laws? 100%, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this. Next is government mandate. Should healthcare insurance providers be required to offer free birth control? No such thing, doesn't matter. Do you support the death penalty? Absolutely 100%. There are some people who say that the death penalty is not warranted, that you don't need to kill people because they commit a very serious crime. This is absolutely despicable in my society. If you commit any crime, you're a collective, right? So if you commit any crime, we put everyone to death, and the death penalty is no exception in that. It's it's a necessity for any society to have the death penalty. Next is women in combat. Again, genetic modification doesn't matter. Next is gender workplace diversity. I 100% agree that you should, hire someone based on their gender identity rather than their actual qualifications. That's just a no-brainer. Next is niqab. Should women be allowed to wear? Nope. We only allow Christianity in our server. No Arabic people, no white people. No, nothing. I have to clarify this because some people will say you're only saying this against one certain thing, so I always have to say white people after it because otherwise people assume I'm racist to only people who aren't white. It's a very confusing thing and I don't understand why people have this problem. Anyway, next is safe spaces. I 100% agree with safe spaces. There definitely should be places where only the powerful and elite can stay and everyone else can't go into. Next is the First Amendment. Again, I already did this one. Next is influenza. Should a terminally ill patient be allowed to end their lives? Well, of course, no one has any individual thought, so I don't think they should actually have the right to actually disagree with me. So if I say that they should be killed or not killed, then I think it's completely fine based on my own judgment, which is obviously empirical and objective. Next is domestic policy issues. Gun control, again, I already said this. Blah 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 blah. Should the school government order schools to be closed in order to combat coronavirus? Again, in my society, what we would do is we would shoot all of the people with coronavirus, so there's absolutely no need for this. Next is, should the President of the United States have the power to deploy military troops in order to stop protests? 100%. The government should have all power and no individual should have any power. Next is drug policy. Are you in favor of decriminalizing drug use? Absolutely, 100%. That's how I actually brainwash people as well, is I give them like these really, really bad drugs. I took a lot of inspiration from a lot of different sci-fi movies and stuff, and I give people drugs and they completely forget about what happened, and then they kind of stay hypnotized, as well as the genetic modification that I implanted in them originally. So it's a very good system. Next is armed teachers. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns at school? 100%, but of course they won't because they have no individual thought. Next is term limit. Should there be a term limit set for any member of Congress? Absolutely not. This is a dictatorship, basically, where I rule supreme. No one can really override my authority, and I think it should be the exact same for Congress, except I can only override people who are below me's authority, unless people above them say it. Next is the NSA domestic surveillance. Should NSA, National Security Agency, be allowed to collect basic metadata of citizens' phone calls, such as, okay, it doesn't actually cite the example, but 100% the NSA is abolished in my place. We replace it with the bread pig overlords. Basically, they can just spy on anyone and do whatever they want. There's no real actual boundaries around that. I don't know, people have this really weird thing where they don't want the government spying on them. It's really, really stupid. Anyway, next is Muslim surveillance. There's no Muslims allowed in my society, only Christians, so completely irrelevant. Next is gerrymandering. Should we redraw the congressional districts? Well, of course, there's no democracy in my society, so I don't actually know why you would need to do this. Next is the no-fly list gun control. Should people on the no-fly list be banned? 100% not, because there's no crime, and if you do commit a crime, everyone is executed, so it doesn't matter. Next is affirmative action. I strongly support affirmative action. I think that everyone should basically be based on their identity rather than anything else. That's why we pretty much have extincted any race that isn't a minority, and minorities are obviously red pigs. So of course we're doing that right now. Next is, should it be illegal to burn the American flag? No, we burn the American flag like daily in my society. I don't understand. Next is Patriot. Do you support the Patriot Act? I don't know what this is because it's not in my society. My society are not patriots, they're nationalists, they're Nazis and communists. So, we're not patriots, we're nationalists. Thank you very much. Next is net neutrality. Should internet service providers be allowed to speed up access to popular websites? Honestly, there's no actual internet in my society because it just holds society back. That's why we instead implanted, collective thoughts in people's brains so they don't even use that kind of stuff. Not necessary. Next is gun liability. Should victims of gun violence be allowed to sue firearms? Again, no one actually sells firearms in my society, but everyone thinks that people do buy them. Next is social media regulation. Of course not, there's no internet. Next is whistleblower protection. I hate whistleblowers, honestly. They completely ruin my entire organization. We kill all whistleblowers. Next is eminent domain. Should the government be allowed to seize private property within? Yep, 100%. Next is Supreme Court reform. Should the Supreme Court be reformed to include more seats and term limits on judges? There are no term limits. We have full dictatorship powers. Next is Social Security. Should the government raise the retirement age for Social Security? I couldn't give less of a crap because there is no social security in my society. Next is political advertisement. No, okay, this one's completely useless. Next one is Edward Snowden. Should the US government grant immunity to Edward Snowden? I don't know who this is. He looks like a prepubescent child, so I don't really care about him. Next is Air Force. Should the military upgrade Air Force One? Honestly, they should disband it. Anything to do with the American government being prosperous completely annoys me. Next is economic issues. Equal pay. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? 101% no. Women should get more money than men. I don't understand why there's this disparity. Women have higher intellects, bigger brains. I say this as a man myself, so I don't really understand the problem here. Next is taxes. Should the US raise taxes on the rich? 100%. We put a 90% tax rate on the rich and a 0% on the poor, and then we just, differentiate the money between them. Next is minimum wage. Should the government raise the federal minimum wage? 100%. In my society, it's about 106, but of course, I have a different currency, the US. My currency is valued less than the US dollar by like 10 cents. So, if you do all the math, it pretty much equalizes out. Next is paid sick leave. No such thing as being sick. It's just a bunch of bullshit kids make up so they don't have to go to school. Next is the welfare drug test. Should welfare recipients be tested for drugs? Absolutely not. I don't understand what this is. Next is universal basic income. Yes, we give everyone $15,000 a month. Next is government spending. Government spends all the money it needs. It does not need to have a balanced budget, if that's what this is saying. No balanced budget. Next is economic stimulus. Should the government use economic stimulus to aid the country? I don't really care because we don't use that here. Next is a corporate tax. We use the corporate tax about 95%, even higher than the rich. Next is welfare. Should there be fewer or more restrictions on current welfare benefits? I really don't care. This one has no relevancy in my society. Next is free tax filing. Should the IRS create a free electric tax filing system? You know what, there are absolutely no taxes that people actually need to fill out. Normally it's the actual government doing all the taxes. Sometimes we kind of like put a little bit over, a little bit under, depending if people actually like the people that we're taxing. It's a very effective strategy. Next is corporate mega mergers. We have no corporations in my society, even though there is a very high tax. Everything is pretty much government provided, but we put a high tax on it anyway, so if a company was started up, then they have automatic failure because there's a 95% tax rate. Next is the Federal Reserve. Should the Federal Reserve Bank be audited by Congress? 100%. Anything that isn't owned by the government should 100% be audited and then torn down because it was a conspiracy, that it did some really bad stuff, and then it gets cancelled online. It's great stuff. Next is capital gains tax. Should the government increase tax rate on profits earned from the sale of stocks, bonds, and reals? Like I said, 95% tax rate. Next is labor unions. Yes, we do have labor unions in my society because it's a collective, non-individual, but the labor unions are completely useless. Okay, next is overtime pay. I 100 million, billion, quadrillion, quintillion times disagree with overtime pay. Terrible, terrible thing. No one should work overtime because everyone already works 24-hour shifts, so I don't really see the point in paying someone extra for a 25-hour shift. Seems a little bit weird to me. Next is China tariffs. Should the US increase tariffs on imported products? Honestly, we don't associate with China, we bomb them instead. Next is domestic jobs. Should the president offer tax breaks to individual companies? No companies that are not run by the government. Next is tech monopolies. Doesn't matter, there is already a tech monopoly by the government. Next is NAFTA. Couldn't care. I destroyed it in my society. Farm subsidies. Should the government subsidize farms? Honestly, in my society, all the farms have been shot and we've basically taken over them with the government as well. Next is estate tax. Should the current estate tax rate be decreased? We have no estate tax in my society. Next is offshore banking. Should the US citizens be allowed to save or invest their money in offshore bank accounts? 100% no. The reason is because that incentivizes actual businesses to be created, and we just don't have that. Next is, should the government acquire equity stakes in companies it bails out during a recession? There are no recessions in my society because there is no economy that isn't run by the government, and the government will just forge files to say that the economy is doing absolutely splendid and you're the one who's doing bad, so you should probably, work better and then it'll go better. Anyway, next is, should the government add or increase tariffs? Blah blah blah, doesn't even matter, we don't get any imports from anywhere else. Next is government pensions. Nope. No one stops working. People don't stop working until they die, which is never, because it's a never-ending cycle, and you just get reborn. It's kind of like what's that theory that people have? I can't really remember what it's called, but basically you come back to life as an animal. It happens like that, but instead it happens with humans, and it's because I implant their brains with a chip, and then it reprograms it back into the genetic modification system, and then it all goes over and over and over again, but they don't actually realize that they're coming back to life. Next is Trans-Pacific Partnership. Do you support the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Again, there's no such thing as the Trans-Pacific Partnership because there is no Pacific Ocean. We actually wiped it out with nuclear bombs. So I don't understand what it's doing here, because all of the species inside the water are inferior to red pigs, so of course we have to wipe them out. Next is the pension reform. Should pension plans for federal, state, and local government workers be transitioned into privately? That doesn't even make any sense. What? Oh, okay, they were gonna lead on with something else, like privately owned businesses or something similar to that. I can't really remember. There are no such thing as privately owned things unless it's owned by the government, which is, I guess, privately owned. It depends on your definition of private. For me, it's my private parts, but I don't really know. Next is the property tax. Would you favor an increased sales tax in order to reduce property tax? There is no such thing as property, so this is completely irrelevant. Next is Bitcoin. I don't really know enough about Bitcoins to actually give, an analysis on it, but really there is no internet, so I don't really see the point of getting Bitcoins. There's only one currency in my entire society. Anyone else makes any counterfeit, money, then I just eliminate the target. Next is online sales tax. Should an in-state sale tax apply online purchases of in-state buyers from out-of-state sellers? I don't really care, because there is no sales, because everything is run by the government. These questions are irrelevant in my society. Next is immigration. Should children of illegal immigrants be granted? Well, are they red pigs? You didn't answer my question. Are they red pigs? If they're red pigs, then they're allowed in. Full citizenship. If they're not a red pig, they are executed. Next is a border wall. Of course, we have a border wall around our society to not let anyone in, but also it doesn't really matter, because no one coming in is really not a red pig, and if they are, then we just execute them anyway. So yes, there is a wall, but it's not really necessary, but we just kept it there because we couldn't be bothered to bulldoze it. Next is Muslim immigrants. No Muslims in my society. Next is immigration, healthcare. Should illegal... Okay, these are pretty irrelevant questions here. Maybe I'll skip them, because all of the immigration that's happening in our society is mainly pigs, red pigs coming over, and then if they're pink pigs, we assimilate them, and if they're not neither of those, then we just kill them. So I don't really understand any of these questions, because they're talking about illegal immigration, but there is no such thing as illegal immigration unless it's not a pig. So I'm going to skip a couple of these. Let's go to electoral issues. Electoral College. So this is really weird. This is a democratic question. So there's obviously no Electoral College. Foreign lobbying. Should foreign lobbyists be allowed to raise money for the American election? No such thing as an election. Voter fraud. I don't care. No one votes. Right for foreigners to be... So, okay, these ones are useless as well. Criminal politicians. Was it? Should a politician who has been formally convicted of a crime be allowed to run for office? 100%. I don't understand any of these ones, because they're all completely useless. Okay, let's go to healthcare. This one's actually very interesting to me. So, the first one is drug price regulation. Should the government regulate prices of life-saving drugs? Of course we do. We put them as high as humanly possible, so that the pharmaceutical companies that don't even exist can't really, top us, because we just put it at the very, very highest price. We don't allow them to do it at any lower price, because we're the ones who own all the pharmaceutical things, because we own all the farms. So basically, when someone says, hey, can we have some of this so we can sell it for, like a cheaper price maybe, we say, okay, cool, you have to pay the regular price, and then you can resell it. So basically, they're just going to make a huge net loss if they try and sell it. So the price... drug price regulation is at an all-time high. It's like $6 million. So, people basically have to work their entire lives just to get some medicine to save them, and then they'll die anyway because we actually poisoned it. Next is marijuana. Do you support the legalization? 100%. Next is pre-existing conditions. Should health insurers be allowed to deny coverage to individuals who have pre-existing conditions? I would say maybe, but we don't really have any non-governmental health insurers again. But, we do deny coverage quite a lot. I mean, we don't really keep our deals. There's no real thing as a contract, and when there are contracts, they're kind of not really defined as contracts. They're just like momentary deals, I should say. Basically, you say you're going to do something, and then you don't do it, and then people get pissed at you, but it's completely fine. Next is mental health. That's just fake. What is that doing here? Next is stay-at-home order. When should your state and the stay-at-home order and reopen the economy? I don't know what this is referring to, but whatever it is, completely useless. Next is Obamacare. Do you support Obamacare? Again, no Obamacare in my society. Next is Medicaid. Should the federal government increase funding of healthcare? 100%. That's why we have the drug price regulation so high, so we can pay for Medicare, so that we can keep the drug price high. Next is a single-payer healthcare. I've already answered a lot of these questions. Basically, my idea with healthcare is that everyone gets free healthcare, but the healthcare isn't actually healthcare, if that makes sense, right? Okay, so I should probably elaborate a little bit more on this point, since I did say before that it was government-run and it wasn't free. What I meant by that is basically you can pay for a better healthcare service if you pay more money, but it's really, 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 really expensive, and mainly only government people can actually get it. So with the actual regular one for, poor and middle class people, the healthcare is just really, really bad. So I just wanted to elaborate on that because it didn't really make too much sense, so I kind of wanted to further explain it. Anyway, I'll continue on with the video. Next is safe haven. Should cities... What is happening on my computer? Do I have something open? Am I calling someone? Okay, all these questions are pretty useless. Next is education issues. Okay. These are all pretty useless as well because there is no education in my society. Next is environmental issues. Oh, this is important. Climate change. Hoax. Dakota Access Pipeline. No such thing as pipelines in my society. Fracking. Do you support the use of hydraulic fracking to extract oil? 100%. Oil drilling heavily support alternate energy is completely fake. Solar panels don't actually work, guys. They only have like a 4% efficiency. Next is plastic product ban. Why would you ever do that? Paris Climate Agreement. Fake. Animal testing, yeah, we do that a lot. Normally we do it on these big elephants. Sometimes we do it on smaller animals like humans, but normally it's with elephants or humans, one of the two. Humans are very effective with testing. Next is corporate subsidies. Should cities be allowed to offer private companies economic incentives to relocate? Again, the government is not going to give itself money unless it's politicians getting money from their own taxes that they govern over. So next is science issues, mandatory vaccinations. Again, we have no vaccines. It's a hoax. GMO labels, so the producers be required to label. Again, it's the government doing the stuff, and no, we do not do this. Next is space exploration. Should the government fund space travel? Yeah, we're a big believer of space travel because we like to colonize other planets and then kill all the inhabitants of them. It's very effective. Next is nuclear energy. I heavily disagree with nuclear energy. It's a terrible, non-sustainable way. The only reason that people have nuclear energy is because it gives people the incentive to do more work. If you understand what I'm saying here, I'll try and explain it more in depth later, in like 3 videos. But anyway, we'll go on to the next question. National security issues, military congressional approval. See, we don't really have approval in my society because it's a dictatorship. Next is foreign assassination. We normally assassinate anyone who doesn't really do what the society wants you to do. Next is foreign policy issues, mandatory military service. Yes. United Nations. We destroy the United Nations. We actually bomb the hell out of them. Next is Iran. Bombed. Military spending. Way more than the United States is doing. I don't know what the United States is doing, but they're spending way too little money on military. I mean, seriously. They're spending like one of the least amounts that they've ever spent in their entire existence. I mean, seriously, they have like less spending than Italy. It's terrible. Next is foreign elections. Should the government attempt to influence foreign elections? 100%. We always want our leaders to basically go into their system and then kind of go up the political ladder, and then we get to the top, and then we basically just reign a dictatorship on them. It's a little bit hard to explain, really, but the main gist of it is that we really, really, really want the people that we want in charge, and the people that you want not in charge because they suck and they don't want a dictatorship normally. Next is Israel bombed foreign aid. We bomb all the countries that want foreign aid. NATO bombed. Wait, what? Next, Syrian refugees bombed. Israel boycott bombed. Next is torture. 100% endorsed. Next is Afghanistan bomb. Terrorism bombed. Yemen bombed. Drones. No technological advancement for drones. We only use genetic modification. Bombed. Next is North Korea military strikes. We bombed the military strikes. Next is Soleimani bombed. Hong Kong fugitive extradition. We bomb Hong Kong. Next is ISIS ground troops. We bomb ISIS. Next is NATO. We bomb NATO. Wait, did I already do this? I think I'm high. War on ISIS bombed. NSA surveillance. Yes. Oh, well, there's no NSA, right? I've already said this. There's no NSA, but we do government surveillance all the time. Next is Cuba, bombed Ukraine, bombed India, armed, bombed Russia, airstrikes in Syria. We bombed the airstrikes. Next is Jerusalem, bombed F-35, not one of our ships, so bombed. Next is criminal issues. Police body cameras, 100% I do endorse it. There's not really any police in my society, it's more like an army, so basically the army just surveys everywhere and kind of shoots anyone if they do anything suspicious. So, and then we have like cameras, right? Sometimes, so if someone's doing something suspicious, we say, hey, they were doing something suspicious, and that's why we shot them. So, you know, even if they're not guilty, you know, like it prevents a lot of crime from happening if we just shoot them. Next is private prisons. Should the government hire private companies to run prisons? There's no such thing as a private company, but would we? Yes. If there was, yes, but because it's already government owned, we kind of just get the top billionaires to run all of the prisons, and then when they do that, they normally get a lot of the money that they have already accumulated from the prisoners who want to pay the Jesus Christ, who want to pay them off. Next is drug trafficking penalties. Should drug traffickers receive the death penalty? 100%, and everyone in their city should as well. Next is mandatory minimum prison sentences. Do you support mandatory minimum prison sentences for people charged with drug possession? 100%. Next is criminal voting rights. All criminals should not be able to vote because they already put them on the death penalty. Next is solidarity confinement for juveniles. Again, even if you're a juvenile, death penalty. Prison overcrowding, simple, we just kill the ones that we don't really need. Okay, next is transportation issues. Should the government increase spending on public transportation? If it's government funded, 100%, but we should actually make them faulty, so then we actually have to give them even more government funded, and then we put secret military camps beneath them, so that when someone acts out of line and looks suspicious, right? Basically, we just get like a big turret to come out of the ground and then shoot them. So next is the 2016 election. Ohio, Florida, Wisconsin, and Colorado bombed. So anyway, this is the video right here. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed making this. I mean, it's really interesting to kind of get a perspective on my ideas. I think, like, I try to get perspective with other radicals' ideas. So it's a very interesting society that we have right now. If you think that this was a great video, like I do, then hit the like, hit subscribe. Bye. Did you just get fucking KO'd? Hey, I'm a Nazi, and this is crazy, but I met Hitler in Argentina. It's hard to look right when I'm disfigured, so here's my sticker. You fucking